So another question that came through the tags that I put up was a question that pertained or that had to do with why would a good God let an innocent child suffer or be raped, whatever you want to call it. And that's it's a variation of the question of evil or the question of suffering. A lot of people come to the question maybe when they're in the space of questioning God, questioning why He let certain things happen in their lives. They always come with a statement that if God is good, why would He let or allow for suffering to happen to innocent people? And you'd find that most of this, that's like the variation of the question of evil. Now, as I've frequently had these conversations with people, I've always told them one thing in particular, and that's to say that the response to the question of suffering or the question of why would a good God let people suffer, it goes two ways. You can respond to it from a purely emotive way, or use an emotive approach, or you can use a completely logical approach, right? If we were to use a completely logical approach, we can simply say, free will, and hear me out, right? Because someone might beg the question, why would then God give us free will if you know that then would result into the evil happening? Now you'd find that the question of free will comes through with the basis of love. The only ultimate form of love ought to arise from free will. If you only love a person because they give you a love potion, then you don't genuinely express your affections towards them. You might have some hormonal responses towards whatever they do to you, for you, or with you, but there is no affection in it, because remember, at that particular point in time, you are not responding out of a genuinity of affection towards the person. Basically, you don't have a choice to love the person, as opposed to when you fully, completely, after looking at all the options available, choose to love the person. That's where the idea of free will comes in. But then the idea of free will also brings about other consequences, where people then, by virtue of their free will, choose to not love God, because He has given them the capacity not to love Him. And by virtue of not loving Him, that then leads to other decisions, that in God's sight cause suffering or lead to suffering and all that kind of stuff. So that's why then people choose to make atrocious acts like rape and all those things that ought to be looked down upon, right? By virtue of their free will, they make the decision to do those things. And of course, with every action, there are consequences to it, and they will definitely be judged by God, or they've already been judged by virtue of the decisions that they've made, right? That begs the question, why does He not then take away the free will? If He were to take away the free will, then there won't be genuine affections towards Him. People won't then choose Him by virtue of loving Him. They would only choose Him because that's the only choice that they've got. I know some people are going to ask the question, I know already people have asked the question of, if there's only two choices, God and not God, do we really have free will? And that's a question that I'll definitely address it. If you want me to address that question, put it in the comment section. Tell me to address question and then I'll address it in my upcoming videos after these response videos. So yeah, by virtue of that idea of free will, people then choose to do evil and then cause suffering. But then again, we know that justice is definitely going to be served. Evil will be taken out of the picture, right? Because that also then usually then begs the philosophical question: if God is omniscient, omnipotent, and all powerful, or why, if He lets evil happen, is He just not powerful enough to stop it? If He allows for it, then it's not all good. That that philosophical conundrum that we usually put in, that's something that I can also address for another another video, because as you present all these ideas, there's a lot of questions that are begged by these ideas, but I'll focus for now on the question. So God doesn't let bad things happen. The fact that He gave people free will leads to those bad things happening, right? If He eliminates the free will, then there is no free choice, right? Then people won't love Him because they generally do love Him, but they will love Him because they don't have any other choice. When He leaves the free will, when He allows for free will to happen, people have the choice not to choose him, and when they don't, they then make those atrocious decisions, and that's what causes evil and suffering. Now there is the further question of why does he let unnecessary evil or suffering to happen, like earthquakes and all that kind of stuff. There's been various responses that have been given to this. So looking at it from the logical point of view, exclusively logical point of view, there's if God has a completely reasonable what's it called? He has a completely logical reason why he lets for unnecessary suffering to happen, then that is out of our reach and out of an understanding, because we can't completely comprehend why God might allow certain unnecessary evil to happen, right? Maybe it plays into a certain bigger purpose that we don't yet understand, right? But we can't completely say that he's potentially evil to let that to be the case. Now, looking at it from the emotive perspective, and that's what most people are actually looking out for, right? It's the response. Should I say? It's to say that God. The beautiful thing about the Christ is that God doesn't simply look upon His creation and pities them pities them about the suffering that they're going through. God put on flesh and came to suffer along with humanity. So it's the response to give to this particular emotive response, or should I say questioner, is to say that the suffering that the person is going through, God has an idea what they're going through. God understands the suffering that they're going through, and God most certainly feels for the person and whatever they're going through. It even took him leaving his heavenly place to come and dwell on earth as an innocent person, suffer for the sins of all humanity, so that at the end of the day, man can have the luxury to have an eternal fellowship with God, right, with himself. So now if you look at it from that perspective, you'd find that God relates with your pain. God relates with your every mishaps that may have happened in your life, and the mere fact that he understands your pain makes him that relatable being who is all-knowing, all-understanding, all-perfect, and just, that he will give the appropriate measure of justice, well knowing what kind of experience you may have gone through, right? So the best response that I can give that might not even be good enough from someone that's coming from an emotive perspective is to say that God understands the suffering. He's not simply watching from a distance, but he has come and partaken of the human suffering, experienced it by himself, and also acknowledged us that at the end of the day, this suffering is temporary, but the joy is eternal. The joy is long-term. And therefore, to anyone that it might have been going through or an experience of much suffering, I would like to propose to you that God does understand, because he has experienced even worse, if you may ask. He has experienced even worse, just for him to bear the burden of suffering and understand what his creation goes through, and that would then also contribute to how relevant is he that he who has gone through the suffering and overcome at the end should also guide us through the suffering, strengthen us, and also make us victorious to the very end. So that's the best response that I can give about that question of suffering for now. Maybe as time goes on, I'll get a deeper understanding of the question, and I can respond to it much more perfectly. All in all, I hope you have such a lovely day. I hope you have such a beautiful day. It's a lovely warm weather by the time this video was recorded. So I hope you enjoy it. Take a swim, relax, and enjoy. Have a lovely day, and God bless you. Do not forget to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. Anything you may have a disagreement about, do it. And if you're watching this video from Instagram, just check out my YouTube channel. The link is in my bio, and I'll put the link also in there on the description here. So have a lovely day and enjoy. Kudos.